This is America. My name is Hobson McCain,
My name is Mark Ray Redmond.
and we're coming to talk to you today about the economic segment of this week's show. Now, this segment is a little bit different than most of our other economic segments in that it doesn't, um, it directly affects your local and state economy, but it's not necessarily monetization of anything. There's no money being exchanged, but it's a very important issue that you guys need to focus on.
Yeah,
And
our economic segment usually focuses on something that will affect you directly economically, like something like a new tax or something that's going on with our laws, something that's going to make everything cost more, something to that effect. But if you didn't know, your local laws and your local legislation and your local politics are very important to you economically.
yeah, so basically, we're talking about the importance of voting in local and state elections, uh, like the midterm election that's coming up in November. Um, you know, most people, most people don't even vote in the presidential election, but more people vote in the presidential elections than they do in local and state elections. And this is kind of ironic, given that the president is more of a he's more of a face and a vocal point for international politics and international interaction. So he
Yeah,
protects the state
like
of.
he's like a U.S. representative.
Yeah, I mean, he like protects the state of the nation. He relays different things to different countries, and his policies mostly affect the relationships that we have with foreign entities and foreign powers. So,
Right.
in terms of directly affecting, you the viewers' everyday life, the presidential election isn't the most impactful. Now, before we go on, we're going to say this is not to say that the presidential election is unimportant. Don't vote in the presidential election. No, we live in a democracy where voting matters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the same time, you have to realize a lot of people in the United States are complaining now that they think that their vote doesn't hold any weight. Right? There's 350 million Americans. If I don't vote, it's not gonna matter. Even if I do vote, it's not gonna change things. But at the same time, in state and local elections, when 20% less of the population is voting in this election, which gives you a substantial increase in the weight of your vote, people don't go out and vote, right? Um, and this is voting for things like your state representatives, your senators, the people that are electing the president, really, because like we saw in the 2016 election,
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump did not win the popular vote. He lost by 3 million votes. Um,
Exactly.
but he won the Electoral College. The Electoral College is voted on by the representatives, the members in Congress who you elect to office in these
Exactly.
midterm elections.
So that means that to all the people that disagree with the way that our country is being ran, to everybody that has an opinion, and is kind of using that excuse that I personally like, I used to understand. I don't think my vote's going to matter. One vote, it's a billion people here, whatever number we have for the population for the United States. One vote, kind of against all of that, really doesn't seem that important. But you got to think about it. Everybody isn't voting where you live. So for me personally, I live in Trotwood, Ohio. My vote is a lot more important in Trotwood, Ohio, to the well-being of Trotwood, Ohio. If I vote on a bill that has something to do with taxes that either will raise them or drop them, if I vote on it in Trotwood, Ohio, and everybody in Trotwood, Ohio doesn't vote on it, that makes my vote that much more important. You got to think about it. If everybody isn't voting, then that exponentially increases the importance of each vote that's cast.
And then on the flip side of that, if everybody comes in with this mindset of, oh, well, my vote does one vote, missing out on one vote doesn't matter. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you want the Republicans to get in office, then you're like, oh, well, theoretically half the nation is Republican, half the nation is Democrat. So If I don't vote, then we still have 49.9% of the nation going to be voting for Republicans, right? Theoretically.
Hmm.
But when you know, 42% of people are thinking that way, and that was just a random number. But you know, when a large portion of the United States population is thinking, "Oh, well, my vote doesn't matter, so I'm not going out to vote," then that leaves the the constituents that are voting for these representatives are more representative of a smaller population, right?
The
And
population that's been voting.
yeah, so so for example,
Think about
in
it.
in the 2014 congressional election, 45.8% of white people came out and voted. 39.7% of black people came out and voted, and 27% of Hispanics came out and voted. 27% of Hispanics came out and voted. So let's look at the biggest portion demographic. So 45.8% of white people. That means
Hmm.
a majority of the white non-Hispanic Americans did not vote in that election, which means that whoever won the congressional election is representative of a minority of the population. So his constituents, I don't whoever won those elections, his constituents, their interests are not the interest of the majority because the majority didn't vote. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
And then same thing for the black population and the Hispanic population, which whose numbers were even lower. Now in the presidential election, 65.3% of white people voted, 59.4% of black people voted, and 47.6% of Hispanics voted. This is a 20% increase around the board in terms of percentage of people who voted. And I think even in the total, it's still only totaled out to like 49.2% of total Americans came out and voted.
Right. We understand that the country was meant to include everybody that had the right to vote. That is the only way to ensure that the country runs smoothly and ensure that we don't have misrepresentation like we do right now. The misrepresentation that's taking place in the U.S. government is not the fault of the U.S. people, but it's not entirely Russia's fault. You can't just entirely blame Russia for the fact that we have Donald Trump in office. Like I'm sorry to say it, like I don't like saying it, but the facts are that if people have been more active in their state elections, in their local elections, and chose electors that would have followed the popular vote instead of doing their own thing, kind of sort of, and choosing Donald Trump, even though the American people did it, maybe we would have had a different outcome politically. Like maybe we would have a different president.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, this has been going on for a few different elections. So
Hmm.
every it wasn't just the 2016 election that was skewed in terms of the results because a majority of Americans don't vote in any election. So
That's true.
I'm not taking away from your point at all. Um, you know,
I know.
Democrats do have they have a harder time getting voters to turn out than Republicans do. Um, that's just the statistics on it, and a lot of that's because of generational effects. Younger people who are a large portion of the Democratic voter base vote at a substantially lower rate than people who are over 50. Around 55% of people over 50 vote, while you know a little bit over 25% of people under 40 vote. So that's where the disparity comes from. Um, Now, what does state and local elections affect? Actually, like, you know, what is voting in your school board election, your state congressman election, your state representatives election? What is that? What do they work on? Right. That's why people don't vote. They don't know what these people are working on.
Right.
But
You can see it.
yeah, no, they people who are elected in midterm elections, they make decisions over state tax money, where state tax money goes. So the federal government allocates uh, tax money, your federal taxes, they allocate that money to states. So states have a certain amount of money, but then that money is divvied up and the state decides where to place that money in terms of education, infrastructure, transportation, all of that. So your state and locally elected officials are the ones who are making decisions where that money goes.
And
So
the person that makes a decision as to who makes a decision is you. So if you vote for someone and they have their views aligned with yours, then the tax money could potentially get spent the way that you would have spent it. But if you're one of those people that disregard local elections and disregard state elections and only care about the presidential race, then you will live in a place where you're not represented. You're
yeah,
not represented because you didn't vote.
and
And just because maybe you vote for a person and they don't get elected, at least you tried, and at least you are getting into the you're getting into the habit
becoming
of
more politically
casting
aware.
the ballot, because you need
And
to get in the habit of casting the ballot for the foreseeable future. Because if you want to be somebody that has something, you want to have an opinion about the government. If you want to have a serious opinion about the government and you don't vote, then you're a hypocrite. Sad facts.
and an example of this is Flint, Michigan, right? So Flint, Michigan had corruption in their local government, and so the state governor he allocated officials and resources to determine where the money of Flint was split up and where it was invested into, right? So Flint, Michigan hasn't had clean water since what, 2014,
Yeah, since senior year,
2012?
bro. Senior year of high school.
Yeah, so 2014. Um, and this is because the governor is a Republican, and Flint, Michigan is majority a black population. And I'm sure, as you know, most black people vote Democrat. So these are not his constituents. The way elected officials work is that they make decisions based on the interest of their constituents, the people who voted for them. So if whoever was elected as governor, 90% of his base is 50-year old and up and white males, let's say. Then when a 24-year-old black female comes and complains to him, he's not necessarily taking her opinion with the heaviest weight, because
she wasn't going to.
yeah,
She wasn't going to vote for him anyway,
yeah. So
and he knows that.
so that's what it means when I say that elected officials work based on the interests of their constituents, the people who voted for them, the people who they know that they can count on their vote in the next election. Those are the people whose interest that they're going to work for. So the people
Look at
in
Donald
Flint,
Trump.
yeah.
Look at Donald Trump.
You said what?
I said, look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump does not speak for the entire country. He does not speak for every group of people in the United States. He speaks for his constituents, and it's very clear. It's very obvious that he's not speaking for everyone. He's not speaking for you or me.
Yeah.
We on this show, and we disagree with what he does on a regular basis. We agree with some of the things he does. We understand what he does when it makes sense. But for the large part of things, he's not a representative of me or you.
Yeah. So in this upcoming election in November, make sure you guys are not only don't just go out and vote just to go out and vote. Educate yourself on the topics, the issues, the platform that these people are running on. Like for example, in Gwinnett County, we have a man, Everton Blair, is running for school board in Gwinnett County. Gwinnett County is 31.9% black, and we've never ever had an African American elected official in Gwinnett County. So if you're black in Gwinnett County, you should be fired up and about rushing. You should be trying to line up at the polls now to vote for Everton or to vote for.
It's long past due. It's long past due.
It's 2018. It's 2018. The black population is growing around the country. The minority population is growing around the country, and we've never had a non-white elected official in Gwinnett County.
Gwinnett County is
a little bit absurd.
Atlanta, correct?
Gwinnett County is it's the suburbs of Atlanta. So it's Metro Atlanta.
Everybody knows what Atlanta is. You shouldn't have your first black anything in Atlanta in 2018.
Exactly.
No reason for it.
And then there's people like Mark Pinsley who are running for PA state senatorial. PA State Senate, who we're gonna have on the show on August 4th. And he's running on a platform to revolutionize Lehigh Valley and their progressive energy. So,
He has a lot of good ideas.
you know, you guys need to learn about these things. Learn whether you're gonna vote for Mark Pensley, vote for Everton Blair, or you're gonna vote for the person who's running against them. Know why you're voting for them. Look up why you're voting for them. Don't just look at the R, the D next to their name and just click on it. You want to see what they're going to change, what they're going to do. So make sure you guys are educating yourselves on these things, on these facts, and getting involved, because whether you're volunteering for a campaign, going door to door, knocking on people's doors, canvassing, trying to educate the rest of the community about it, this is what's going to make the majority begin to have more of a voice. Right now, the minority of Americans are voting, which means that the elected officials are representing the minority of America. So if you're disagreeing with what everybody's saying, then you should get people who are like-minded like you to go out and vote, so that the next time we have an election in November, the people that we elect will be working on your behalf, because you mobilized and educated your community on what they need and what you believe they need, you know? So with that, we're going to close it off. Make sure you guys are going to vote. Make sure you're registered to vote. And, you know, let's get politically active, you know? This is something that's really important. This is something that our country was founded based off of, is the citizen participating in democracy. So with that, thank you guys for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe. We're growing each and every day. We love all the support that you guys are giving us. So continue to do that. Thank you. We'll see you guys next time.
Be safe.